Hey everybody, Scott Shores here again, and this is another episode of the Wolf in the Know Network. We need to discuss very serious topics: Nova Scotia, Canada, everybody, RCMP, National Defence Thesis. This involves every single person in Canada, Nova Scotia, and really in the world. Alright, so I found my phone's GPS location set to this residence in Stillwater, Nova Scotia, okay? Now, if you go to the search.open.canada.ca and search for a company named EMIC, you'll find that the contract dates match the land registration dates for this site. Well, there are pictures on the person's social media of them at Irving Shipbuilding, but also signed certificates from the Prime Minister. Now, you'll also then find that David Pudgley's, a journalist from Ottawa Citizen, National Post, as well as Brett Ruskin, did articles on military propaganda linked to EMIC, the company listed there, happening in Nova Scotia. More specifically, they talked about an event regarding howling wolves. Now, you see the title of my project here. It's called The Wolf in the Neural Network. And it turns out that's probably not such a big coincidence after all. So me finding my GPS location set there, getting confirmation of this psychological warfare being run by this company, EMIC. EMIC is a subsidiary of defense contractor SCL Group, and so a sister company of Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica spawned these global inquiries into election interference around the world and data manipulation, and because of it, major changes were made. There were billions of dollars in fines in different instances, and the Privacy Commissioner of Canada still has ongoing issues with this in court today. And during that, they discussed the different methodologies and stuff they used. And one of the methodologies they discussed was target audience analysis, or TAA. Now, if you go back to that contract and look in the additional section, it says TAA. TAA, or target audience analysis, is psychological warfare as is defined by NATO. And Brittany Kaiser, a former high-level employee of Cambridge Analytica, had testified to UK Parliament that it was considered weapons-grade communication tactics, and the government had to be told if it was being deployed elsewhere, right? So I also, in another case, have military IPs connecting to my systems, right? Like, there's a lot of other evidence, but it's pretty substantial, right, that this occurred. So now, if you go and check, you'll see that Emma Briant, who testified to parliaments, more specifically in the UK in this instance, regarding Cambridge Analytica and target audience analysis, is looking into these howling wolves in Nova Scotia and these events and associations with EMIC. And here, you've got my phone's GPS location being set to this house where these correlations obviously match. So what's she obviously going to come across? That's right. Right? She's going to come across that address. It's going to lead to me very clearly. This has to do with Cambridge Analytica. And like, when you see the stuff that some of these people did, like sending sex workers to people's places, like hacking and spyware, consistent with my GPS location being changed. Right? So anyways, I didn't know about this Emma Briant thing until just like 2-3 days ago, right? Today's like the 4th of February or something like that. However, back in, when was this? October 2nd, 2024, I guess David Pudgley, again, releases another article, and it's about Emma Briant stating that she took the DND to court about these topics. And if you actually read through this, it has some really interesting points. It says the Privacy Commissioner of Canada has already ruled that DND violated Bryant's rights for failing to disclose the documents. I've contacted the Privacy Commissioner of Canada, gave them all this information. They won't even talk to me. And I'm here saying it looks like they planted evidence on my phone, like law enforcement planted evidence on my phone and then tried to delete this. Nobody's contacting me. And in fact, DND response to her privacy request for records misrepresented facts, misrepresented the act, and misled the applicant. The department responded with a series of positions and assertions that could only be described as the proverbial runaround. They're giving her the serious runaround here, right? Of course they are. But, right? So all of this was very similar to the training that was involved in Cambridge Analytica. So let's go through this. In October 2020, a military exercise involving creating fake letters about wolves on the loose, which caused panic in one community in Nova Scotia, was a propaganda test gone awry. It generated embarrassing news coverage across Canada and some U.S. media outlets. Now, if you actually check the date on the letter, It's not in October 2020, it's August 3rd, 2020. 2 days later, I would send my letter to J.D. Irving. That would go to the government, all these players, including Stephen McNeil. The next day, Stephen McNeil would suddenly announce his resignation. I would howl in that letter. That letter was done at least by the 27th of July. So I'm telling you, I had spyware. They must have seen that letter, right? And they seen the howling, and I used wolf behavior to describe the investigation that would occur at J.D. Irving between December 9th, 2019 and the end of February 2020. Well, regarding the investigation at J.D. Irving, it would start December 9th, 2019. As part of my submission, I said, and I sent a very clear message in my first HR meeting about how I was being treated. All I needed was cooperation. I would not be talked to like a dog or be treated like one. Well, now you got a dog and I'm looking right at you. And I hope you like the sound of coherent, intellectual, informed howling, because it's going to be loud, and I'll make sure it resonates between the cubicles, the bulkheads, and the halls just for you. And when the other dogs hear it, I hope they start howling too. They have every right and reason to. Right? And now I did this because I'd already been attacked and they framed me. Now that's what we're going to discuss next. Now, note, I sent my letter August 5th, 2020, right? August 6th, 2020, Stephen McNeil would suddenly announce his resignation. Now, I gave them 6 months to implement privacy policy and fix everything. So if you go 6 months from that date, it takes you to February 5th. That's when Stephen McNeil would leave office. But also then, the CEO, President Kevin McCoy, American, would also step down. Now, when I would make my Freedom of Information request, in I believe June 2022, regarding the theft of my wallet in 2019, I would get it back on the 23rd of June. And on that same day, the then president, Kevin Mooney of Irving Shipbuilding, would also step down. And he was also an American, and you'll see why this is important. Despite knowing almost immediately the Canadian Forces was at fault for the Wolf exercise debacle, some inside D&D headquarters in Ottawa suggested trying to falsely label the incident as a creation of Russian disinformation. So knowing it was wrong, still wanted to do it. So if that's associated with me, they're saying I'm some kind of Russian disinformation or something like that, right? Like that. Do you hear what I'm saying here? And let me keep going. One of the records Briant and the Ottawa Citizen obtained indicates that Canadian military public affairs officers were linked to a U.S. propaganda expert who tried to push the fabricated claim that Russians were behind the Wolf letter. So is that a U.S. person claiming that in some way I'm associated with Russia or something? And this is the Canadian government attacking a Canadian citizen they know is innocent from the start and saying this stuff about Russia? Listen, my wallet goes missing back in May of 2019, ends up with Halifax Regional Police. 12 days later, they get lucrative job transfers to J.D. Irving after needing job transfers because of the release of the Wortley Report in Halifax. Well, guess who J.D. Irving sends to investigate? It just so happens to send the same officer that they just hired, and the same officer that had control over my wallet. All right, everybody, here's another section. So, just after the investigation at J.D. Irving, they had laughed about mock racism and harassment, also narrative to get them. Just after these officers were transferred to J.D. Irving because of the Wortley Report and this types of involvement. I absolutely technically and ethically dominated them. It is an objective fact. The abuse, the harassment stuff was objective. There was a history. They removed it all. They knew about it. It was from day one. Whatever, okay? So I want to read the next part to you here. Other initiatives revealed by the Ottawa Citizen included military efforts to keep tabs on members of the public, including those involved with the Black Lives Matter movement. So just after this investigation, everything would happen with George Floyd. This would be about June 2020. So June 10, 2020, I would go out with some signs up at the corner here. It said Black Lives Matter and I can't breathe. I'm 41 kilometers from a police station. 2 police officers show up driving back and forth. They terrified community members. They were like, why are they doing this? One pointed looking down at me then, and another one kept driving back and forth to try to intimidate. Right? If now, a journalist stopped. I didn't want to do a story. They pushed and wanted a picture of me and signs and the dog. So I let them do it. My family's like, Scott, just do an article. So we did an article. That would get published on June 17, 2020. That day, my internet would get cut for 2 days and require a technician to fix it. Me being in that newspaper and on the front page was not intentional. Like, I live so far away from anybody, the chances of anybody showing up, right? And then being on the front page, I didn't know. They just told me on the day of. So, just imagine being these people. This is one of the only newspapers they don't own, and my face pops up on the front page. They probably shit themselves. Now, if you check in the background of that image, you will see the Department of Transportation truck. If you check the owner of the residence where my GPS location was set, that's associated with these EMIC contracts, you will see that they also have a desk at Department of Transportation. And here it is stating that they might have targeted these Black Lives Matter protesters. Well, you're probably all wondering how I found this information about EMIC and this association with this address. So I found my GPS location just set there. When I started compiling the Wolf and the Neural Network was in June 14, 2022. All right, this was after Brunswick News Inc. had sold to Postmedia. I went back and double checked all the associations and come across everything with David Pugliese, and then seen that he started this posting pattern directed at J.D. Irving in 2018, correlating with Bill C-18, but also when my job got posted with J.D. Irving, right? So then I seen this behavior in J.D. Irving going back and forth with Postmedia during the time that I was employed there. And I did my own investigation, and there was definitely something going on with his posting pattern. It was very specific and directed. Anyways, let's put that aside. So I follow this guy, and then I come across him talking about Cambridge Analytica and all this stuff, and then I come across the contracts. And I would have came across them about July 3rd, 2022. But I didn't know about the Howling Wolves and psychological warfare stuff until about May 15th, 2023. I released the Wolf and the Neural Network Alpha on July 11, 2022. And I sent this out broadly to media outlets, the government, everybody, because something bad was going on. I did try to resolve this and everything. You can see delivery confirmation specifically from HRP and them stating that they'll get back to you in so much time, yada, 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 yada. So if you jump forward to July 28th, 2022, you'll see that I have these massive property blips going up to like 600 and 700. Right? And correlating with this event, and me saying I'm going to walk down to Halifax Regional Police and everything, right? So you got these delivery confirmations, I walk down to CSIS, I give them evidence, nobody's there for me to talk to, so I walk down to Halifax Regional Police. Now, if you check August 1st, 2022, you'll see that Valent Legal reported that there was hacking and then phishing directly directed towards me. Think about the delivery confirmations, think about these property blips, think about all the people that this was delivered to. How did Dan Kinsella, RCMP, HRP, CSIS, and the government not know I was walking down there that day, right? Obviously they did. It shows that they knew that I was walking down there August 2nd, 2022. They wanted to lie about this and entrap me, but also entrap their officers, right? So I found this by following David Pugliese in this posting pattern and this issue with J.D. Irving. Now, take a look. He's the one who posted this article about Emma Briant. Now, by October 24th, just what, 22 days later, Chris Alexander would go into Parliament and testify that David Pugliese was somehow associated with being some sort of KGB agent or something like that. So when you go back and look at these EMIC contracts, they had the full support of Jonathan Vance, Jody Thomas, Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan, who would have reasonably been involved in this core issue with me, right, and now associated with this touchy issue with EMIC and associated then directly with the Prime Minister, right? So, but you've got now the military stating that this was Russian disinformation, but they knew right away that it wasn't. So why would they have that reaction just after August 2020? Was it because they were going to retaliate against me after the McNeil thing, come and say I'm some sort of Russian something, something, something if I brought that out? But more interesting is, like, I did this investigation into David Pugliese. I came across some concerning information. So did these people. What is going on here? Every piece of evidence indicates that these people were trying to frame me. We've got SUVs stalking children so bad that they were reported by third parties as pedophiles. Surrounded the person. They got out and said they were a private investigator. These people, after I was falsely arrested and tortured by Halifax Regional Police and Nova Scotia Health Authority, and you can see these people are monsters. RCMP kept coming to my house, threatening me, not allowing me to file a complaint. I was completely calm. Every record will show it. My family will say the same thing. Completely calm. And at that time, they deleted the EMIC contracts from the website. Look at it. So I couldn't even defend myself if they arrested me. And then I said, look, they're in the Wayback Machine. And boom, they show back up on the website. During that period, these people terrorized me. Well, I had blisters on my feet from walking to see my dying mother in the hospital, threatening me. And then Tim Houston shows up at the hospital in the morning that my mother died. Now, think about why Tim Houston was there that morning. They needed to cover all of this up. Now, if he shows up and I were to freak out at that emotional time, Bell, CTV, CBC, whoever would play whatever story Tim Houston told them, because if not, they have to face Daddy and explain their involvement regarding Bill C-18. Well, neighbors reported lights in my house, right? A break and enter. So, by February 17, 2023, I would send this out broadly. March 13, 2023, I would announce I'm going to walk down to the police and file a complaint. Asked them so many times to please come forward. Repeatedly begged. They did not. I go down, file my complaint. I've got video evidence. Family will show you how calm, cool, collected I am. They want to know all the questions and answers as well. I go down to HRP. I sit down there for a long time. Completely calm, no problems. I file my complaint. I leave.
Well, I have some great news. The police didn't kill me this time, or, torture me, or falsely arrest me, or anything like that. So, that's a positive. I actually get to go home and see my dog tonight. So, yeah, small things, right?
Right? I then, after a couple hours, get a call from RCMP Sheet Harbor. Scott, you're arrested under IPTA. You have to tell us where you are and you're going to be arrested and now taken in. She's like, I don't know why they're making us do this. And I was like, because they know you're not going to do anything about it, Jessica, because you didn't. She tells me she contacted multiple departments to ask them why they're making her do this, and they're making her do this. She said, Scott, I promise you, if they admit you, I will come take a statement. She completely lied. She never did. Spoiler. Jessica would inform me that this directly came from a Nova Scotia Health Authority director, which is important because Tim Houston personally installed the board of directors for Nova Scotia Health Authority, with the top member, Karen Oldfield, being a good buddy of his. Well, remember, Tim Houston showed up the morning my mother died, which was at St. Martha's Hospital in NSHA on a Sunday at 1:30 a.m. That's a hell of a lot easier to coordinate if you're buddies and installed the director and president of Nova Scotia Health Authority, isn't it? I would then be arrested by two RCMP officers in the parking lot of Walmart in Dartmouth. I had to leave my car there, just abandon it. And they're talking about how calm I am and stuff, because I am. And they take me down to the police or to the hospital, and they tell them how calm I am.
So RCMP hunted me down and said that I'm some mental health threat, and now I'm sitting in the back of an RCMP vehicle. They didn't talk about Dr. Holmes and what she did, the recording, or any of the evidence. I'm like screwed right now.
You want your window down?
It doesn't matter what I do, they're gonna... Anyways, I tried, everyone. Their screen said I'm sending emails that are increasingly delusional.
Yeah. Is it, actually...
That's right, it's that bad. Like, if they're not, they're full technical audits, and these people are lying, and they're gonna torture me right now. I'm in a lot of trouble. I'm screwed. It doesn't...
I immediately tell Nova Scotia Health Authority employees that, look, I'm the subject of serious abuse. I was filing complaints, and I'd like a lawyer. They told me I'm not a lawyer. I'm not allowed a lawyer. I said, like, hey, I'd like to record it because of the abuse that I've been submitted to, so it's better for all parties that we have a record of this. They refused and said that if I tried to record, they would physically take my phone from me. And I'm sitting there completely calm. The officers, everybody will explain that to you. When I asked for a policy on the recording or otherwise, they said, no, we don't have a policy in terms to a lawyer or whatever either. So they literally completely denied me any policy or rights for me to understand what's happening, and told me that if I don't talk about this, I will just be locked up. That's right. They then took me in a room with Hannah Marie Weimer. She said if I try to record it, she'll have my phone physically removed and just admit me. She then fabricates an entire false record. She doesn't mention me talking about my bias and everything, asking her who I take certain things to, if not the police. How am I irrational for talking to the police? She then tries to claim that I made threats against employees and stuff. I said, what threat? Can you list one? She said, it says here you said you were going to go nuclear. I said, I'm like, okay, what kind of threat? What does it say after? And it just says I'm going to file complaints, which is exactly what I was doing that day, filing complaints. And I had all this evidence, the Wolf and the Neural Network. Guess what Hannah Marie Weimer doesn't mention? That's right. Well, the triage notes don't mention that it was an NSHA director who issued the hit piece to have me arrested. That's right, just brought in some magical thing. So if Hannah Marie Weimer would have gone against this, she would have had to have testified against that director and all these individuals. She was completely aware of it. So she just took the shell of what they did in 2020, or August 22nd, 2022, and copied it over. So you won't see me asking about a lawyer. You won't see me asking about my privacy rights. You won't see the stuff about Tim Houston or my GPS, me admitting my bias. She doesn't talk about me being a technical expert. Doesn't say I asked not to talk about this and she forced me. Doesn't talk about any of it. She doesn't talk about me telling them that somebody touched me and Kristen Holm covered this up. She doesn't talk about my book bag being given to a homeless man on drugs and that they pretended that it was me, because I'm just a crazy person. I'm just a liar. I'm just a piece of trash. Everything I say is just a lie, and she's forcing me under duress to say all of this, right? Which is just the truth. You think about what kind of person that is. I'm then put in a room with 2 cameras recording for almost 24 hours. My family were horrified of the situation. Unprompted about the cameras, they're like, why are they fucking recording you?
So on top of like not allowing me to record anything, telling me I don't have the right to, this is the bed I get. I get this little sheet and this to lay in. That's right. So they can record me while I just lay in here. That's right. I'm an animal. I don't have rights.
They then send me 12 hours away from my friends, family, and anybody to Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, where I had to wash my underwear in the sink. Well, Tim Houston knew about all this. All these parties know this is right. I didn't do anything. I'm going down to file a complaint with all this evidence. So, jump forward then. You look at these dirty cops, Patrick Curran, Jonathan Jeffries, and Ron the Gear. It's easy to show you how they lied and why they lied, right? But then we need to jump forward to August 2023. Because I'm sitting in my house here, get a call from a bailiff, shows up in a couple days, says I'm being served by, I guess, Nova Scotia Health Authority, stating that I was on their property and I'm being trespassed. It states that these people read this to me, physically read this to me, and then they had an individual witness it. And if you look at it, the same person actually signed the entire thing, so the witness didn't actually even witness the paper. Well, they sent me 3 copies. I'm sitting here alone in my house, did absolutely nothing, was never at those locations of 150 some kilometers away. RCMP, D&D, CSIS, HRP, Tim Houston, NSHA all know I wasn't there. A massive breach again, identity theft regarding this and false statements on a legal record from these individuals. Consistent behavior with them framing me, just continuously framing me and framing me and framing me. Well, if you check the date on the record, they left me entrapped for 9 days. So they dated it for this date, but then only sent it to me with the bailiff like 9 days later. So had I gone to the hospital for any reason, I would have been arrested without any type of notification, and they would have charged me, and I would have had no idea what anybody was talking about. I tried to contact security, HR. I tried to contact every department at the hospital to ask them what happened, what was going on. Nobody contacted me back whatsoever. But if you then check, the police chief who I filed complaint against in August 2nd, 2022, which caused the false arrest and torture, he would resign 6 days later. When I tell you these people are covering up for serious fucking abuse, including planting evidence and sexual assault, criminal assault, like hate crimes, it's an understatement of what actually occurred. It is actually horrifying, and they know all this evidence exists. They know I'm right about this address. They know the law enforcement is now planting evidence on people's phones. So, think about this. Like, if you were to take a 40-kilometer drive somewhere and you had your GPS on, if I could go in and delete, like, 10 points, I could make it look like you were somewheres, right? So just even by being able to delete a couple points, I can create reasonable doubt about your actions. Here they are modifying my GPS location, can delete it. Who knows what else they modified? You got Tim Houston benefiting from it, from the theft of my property in multiple instances, from severe violence committed against me. He knows these officers have lied at least 14 different times, and he has done absolutely nothing because it benefits him. This is and was an act of domestic terrorism committed against me and my family. I was absolutely framed by my own country. Nova Scotia Health Authority literally physically and mentally tortured me while they fabricated records. Well, you can see with EMIC and these parties, I was subjected to literal psychological warfare. Right? Like, this was and is a domestic terrorism attack against me as a person. These people showed up with guns. They lied to people with guns. These officers to specifically have them retaliate with their bias and knowing they should have told them what actually happened because they wanted those officers to act out their violence, just like they wanted Hannah Marie Weimer to do exactly what they knew she was going to do, was act out her violence, because if not, she would have to face them just like the officers. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they were specifically lying to men with guns to send them here with those guns and systems and weapons of terror, lying to them to terrorize and threaten me while I'm trying to care for my disabled, mentally, physically disabled mother as she's dying. Right? These are not good people. And I can't see how CSIS and RCMP don't see it like that as well and have serious questions. They know they can't verify anything any of these people tell them. So if they just blanketly say, okay, I trust you, look, I've got 14 different officers lying on the record in serious ways, audio recordings. But that's right, these officers just aren't going to lie. It's all bullshit, and these people fucking know it. I was framed by my own country, and Tim Houston absolutely knows it, and he absolutely is covering up a violent sexual assault. I am not going to stop until this is dealt with. And my recommendation, not even my recommendation, I'm telling you, there is no resolution to this where Mike Duham, Dennis Daly, RCMP commissioners, and Tim Houston are not registered as sex offenders and lose their jobs. I am going for criminal charges. Kristen Carey Lynn Holm will absolutely be criminally charged. In fact, if she has not been removed from her post and there are any other victims, I consider that a violent attack on any of those individuals by Nova Scotia Health Authority, but also the government of Nova Scotia, knowing what they know about that violent, delusional predator and fraud, Kristen Holm. There is no resolution to this issue. You had all this time to deal with this. You could have dealt with it a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Don't tell me, because now you're in a big issue with Donald Trump, that you can't fucking deal with it. That's not my problem. You could have dealt with it before. So, somebody better get the fuck back to me.